Moriscos Riku, Moriscus, meaning Moorish, were former Muslims who converted or were coerced into converting to Christianity. After Spain finally outlawed the open practice of Islam by its sizable Mudejar population in the early 16th century, the Moriscos were subject to systematic expulsions from Spain's various kingdoms between 1609 and 1614, the most severe of which occurred in the Eastern Kingdom of Valencia. The overall success of the expulsion is subject to academic debate, although the large majority of those permanently expelled settled on the western fringe of the Ottoman Empire and the Kingdom of Morocco. The last mass prosecution against Moriscos for crypto-Islamic practices occurred in Granada in 1727, with most of those convicted receiving relatively light sentences. From then on, indigenous Islam is considered to have been effectively extinguished in Spain. Demographics. Estimates of Morisco populations at the time of expulsion vary, many estimates being based on the number of recorded expulsion edicts. However, modern studies estimate around 1 million Moriscos present in Spain at the beginning of the 16th century. Of the Granada Moriscos, 80,000 are estimated to have dispersed in Andalusia and Castile during the deportation from the Kingdom Granada carried out as a result of the War of the Alpujarras. In the Kingdom of Granada, Granada was the last Muslim kingdom in the Iberian Peninsula, and by the late 15th century this region had the largest Morisco population, forming the majority of the region's population. Despite the fact that its people were overwhelmingly ethnically Iberian, it remained the least Hispanized region of Spain. The inhabitants of the kingdom spoke the Arabic language fluently, and were well versed in Islamic doctrine. Granada retained most of the cultural traits of Muslim Al-Andalus, including dress, music, gastronomy, and festivals, until Moorish customs were prohibited by the Catholic monarchs following their conquest of Granada in 1492. After their second revolt against Catholic oppression, in 1568–71, the Moriscos of Granada were deported to the various regions of the Kingdom of Castile, Extremadura and Andalusia. In the Kingdom of Valencia, the second largest Morisco population was to be found in the Eastern Kingdom of Valencia, where Moriscos accounted for about a third of the population. The indigene community spoke Arabic, although they were also fluent in the Castilian and Valencian languages. They were known for their practice of the Islamic faith despite their nominal adherence to the Catholic Church. Among other Morisco communities, they were known for their knowledge of the Quran and the Sunnah, and Valencia alfaquis were known to travel throughout Spain as teachers for other Morisco communities. It was the Valencian Moriscos who, due to their coastal location, established relationships with the Ottoman and Barbary ships. Valencia had been the center of production of Hispano-Moresque ware in the late Middle Ages, and pottery continued to be a significant industry. In Aragon, Moriscos accounted for 20% of the population of Aragon, residing principally on the banks of the Ebro River and its tributaries. Unlike Granada and Valencia Moriscos, they did not speak Arabic but, as vassals of the nobility, were granted the privilege to practice their faith relatively openly. Places like Mule, Zaragoza, were inhabited fully by Moriscos. The only Old Christians were the priest, the notary and the owner of the tavern inn. The rest would rather go on a pilgrimage to Mecca than Santiago de Compostela, in the Aragonese city of Monzón. A peculiar tradition is still celebrated related to the Moriscos known as El Bautizo del Alcalde. It is celebrated on the 4th of December, the festival of Saint Barbara, patron of the city, and involves local politicians throwing chestnuts and sweets from the terraces of the town hall to the crowds below gathered in the main square. On the 4th of December 1643, Castilian troops reconquered the castle from the French during the Catalan revolt. According to local sources, following the capture of the town, its inhabitants chose a Morisco as a mayor, and since his Christian faith was doubted, He accepted to be baptized in public, after which the town erupted in festivities. In Castile, the Kingdom of Castile included also Extremadura and much of modern-day Andalusia. The proportion of its population in most of its territory was more dispersed, except in specific locations such as Villarrubia de los Ojos, Hornachos, Arevalo, or the Señorío de las Cinco Villas, where they were the majority or even the totality of the population. Castile's Moriscos were highly integrated and practically indistinguishable from the Catholic population. They did not speak Arabic and a large number of them were genuine Christians. The mass arrival of the much more visible Morisco population deported from Granada to the lands under the Kingdom of Castile led to a radical change in the situation of Castilian Moriscos. Despite their efforts to distinguish themselves from the Granadans, for example, marriages between Castile Moriscos and Old Christians were much more common than between the former and Granada Moriscos. The town of Hornachos was an exception, not only because practically all of its inhabitants were Moriscos, but because of their open practice of the Islamic faith and of their famed, independent and indomitable nature. For this reason, the order of expulsion in Castile targeted specifically the Hornachuras, the first Castilian Moriscos to be expelled. The Hornachuras were exceptionally allowed to leave fully armed and were marched as an undefeated army to Seville, from where they were transported to Morocco. They maintained their combative nature overseas, founding the Corsairy Republic of Boregreg and Salé in modern-day Morocco. In the Canary Islands, the situation of the Moriscos in the Canary Islands was different than in Europe. They were not the descendants of Iberian Muslims, but were Muslim Moors taken from northern Africa in Christian raids or prisoners taken during the attacks of the Barbary pirates against the islands. In the Canary Islands, they were held as slaves or freed, gradually converting to Christianity, with some serving as guides in raids against their former homelands. When the king forbid further raids, the Moriscos lost contact with Islam. They became a substantial part of the population of the islands, reaching 1/2 of the inhabitants of Lanzarote. Protesting their Christianity, they managed to avoid the expulsion that affected European Moriscos. Still subjected to the ethnic discrimination of the Pureza de Sangre, they could not migrate to the Americas or join many organizations. Later petitions allowed for their equalization with the rest of the Canarian population.